Welcome to a special edition of Tech Diva Success, featuring live coverage from the 2024 Philadelphia-based Women in Tech Summit, and our interview with their founder and leader, who is a huge advocate for all tech divas, Gloria Bell. I got to meet her when her nonprofit Inspiring Tech Foundation was actually selected as our community partner for one of my book projects. Before we get into this episode, let's hear from some of the conference attendees. Anything that you want to share about the Women in Tech Summit, how it's impacted you, why you like being involved?
I'm Amy Client. I am the Senior Director of Employee Communications for CompTIA, the Computer Technology Association. And I am also on the board of the Inspiring Tech Foundation and the Women in Tech Summits.
Great. And what is the Inspiring Tech Foundation?
Inspiring Tech Foundation it was founded last year by Gloria Bell, who is the founder of WITS.
Yes.
So it's a broader organization to kind of expand on some of the work that's being done with the Women in Tech Summit.
So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's really important. What do you love most about the Women in Tech Summit?
It's hard to say like one thing, but if I had to sum it up, it's that vibe. Like it's hard to quantify it, but it's like the support. You feel the genuine collective interests and passion and that like want to be better, like wanting to help each other, wanting to lift each other up, inspire, right? Educate, right? It's all there. It's hard to sum it up, but that's what I would say. It's just a vibe.
It's a vibe. Everything is energy.
Yeah.
So, you have your full-time job at CompTIA.
Yep.
Pretty demanding. And yet you're giving to these boards and activities. What is it about making the time for this 2-day event and making the time to serve on these boards? What's your why for doing that?
I mean, it's kind of twofold. One, I'm just passionate and I love anything that helps, again, like lift people up, drive things forward, level people up in their job, their careers. Like I'm a coach by just like my heart. I'm a coach. And in the work that I do, I don't always have the opportunity to like pour into that on a regular basis. So I've had to find ways that, I can do that. It's twofold with that, like, kind of making sure I have the outlet that I need that drives me. And then also just because I'm passionate.
I'm Nefertiti Williams. I work right now for government contracting, and it's in the healthcare CMS space. I'm a data scientist, so I'm in the trenches with the data. My friend Shar invited me to his conference. So
yeah, give it up for Shar. Yeah. Bring in a friend.
I thought it was an amazing opportunity just to be around like-minded women who are in this tech space. This is such a male-dominated space, so it's nice to connect with women who are on the same journey.
Thanks. Awesome. That's perfect. I'm glad you're here.
So my name is Shar Maddox. I am a knowledge manager for Government Contracting Agency as well. I work for the Department of Defense.
So obviously you brought a friend today.
Yes, I did.
Is this your first conference?
This is my first Women in Tech Summit. So I have attended like Microsoft conferences and stuff, and I normally go with a coworker. So I figured that this would be like a great opportunity to bring a friend to this one. A lot of times when I do attend tech conferences, it's mostly male. I'm always like the only like one of like 5, like women, and I'm always like the only like African-American woman there. So I think this is like a great opportunity to just kind of talk about diversity in tech.
And so is this your first Women in Tech specific conference?
Yep. First time.
Great.
Yes.
Like, what do you think's the biggest difference between something like this other than the obvious, like the people here?
Oh, like I feel like the people are so friendly and so like welcoming. Like women were just like introducing ourselves to each other. Yes, good energy. And with the other tech conferences, it's just focused on, okay, so what do you do? And kind of like, is your place of work hiring? Yeah, so I just like being in these spaces where we're just kind of more welcoming.
My name is Kristen Hinkley. I'm currently a contract designer for Curate Retail Group. This conference was unique in the fact that it gave me a scholarship to attend.
Yeah.
Which I've never gotten before, and I usually don't go to conferences because of financial reasons. That meant a lot to me because it gives me the ability to network with people without paying hundreds of dollars to do so. So it makes it more accessible for people that might not be able to go to these types of things because of those reasons.
So, well, I'm glad you're here.
I'm Isabel Kent. I'm the CEO of Philly Startup Leaders. So we're Philly's largest and most active early stage startup community. We service some 13,000 entrepreneurs over the last 15 years that we've been around, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit. Our goal is really to help entrepreneurs in the region get started, scale here, start here, get talent that can work in the tech community and beyond, and any scalable innovation. And we also want to create a more positive perception for the amazing startup community that's here in the region, and that has been very quietly growing over some time. So I've been with the organization as a member for 10 years, and I've been running it for 3. And it's just such an amazing, tight-knit, open community that's always so generous with sharing information and contacts. And it's always been a no-ego, highly accessible, very casual community that really was built on a lot more relationships and community development than I think anything else. So it's not your typical networking circle, but it's really all about people coming together. And whether it's someone that has sold 2, 3, 4, 5 companies, or someone that's just considering whether innovation and entrepreneurship is for them, or just exploring what that even means, there's always a space for folks in the PSL community. Gloria Bell is actually one of our board members. This is her second tour of duty on our board. And she is a PSL day oneer. She was in the room when the idea came together. She was there when it was incorporated. She was there when we turned into a nonprofit some 8 years later, finally, and has been instrumental this entire time. And in fact, I've met her through PSL events when she was running Tech Girls and starting to do Women in Tech Summit. And she's my personal mentor. So the work that she does, I think, is just so monumental. What she's able to do for young women from a professional development perspective, as a mentor, as a colleague, she's just absolutely incredible and so great to work with. And I feel like WITS is really a great actionable conference that isn't just talking about some of the challenges that you might face as a woman in tech, or, you know, what we like to see. There's a lot of really practical knowledge that you gain through this, and a lot of strong relationships from a very diverse group of women that works across different sectors, different types of companies, different roles within technology. Not all of them are going to be programmers. And so you get this really incredible, well-rounded perspective. And I think that, like, it really broadens how people think about technology overall. And it helps women really establish those networks that hopefully will continue to serve them and what they can offer each other for many years to come after this conference. So it's crazy. This conference has apparently doubled since last year. And I think that's really a testament to just how many women are trying to find community right now. And I just think that WITS creates one of the most accessible, incredible experiences. And everyone's always so excited all the way through all 2 days. And I think if you can keep that energy, that's really special.
All right, you heard it. Sounds like a pretty good event. But now I'm going to share the interview with the legendary Gloria Bell that happened during the Women in Tech Summit held at the Science History Museum. I got to know her story, her motivation, and everything that goes into hosting such a wonderful event that brings technical and non-technical women together at all levels across organizations. Get ready to be inspired. And again, the best way to support her efforts, and mine as well, is to find and follow our projects online. So make sure you go check out the Women in Tech Summit in case you can join us next year. Let's fire it up. Over to the interview. I am so excited to be here with you, Gloria Bell. You are quite the legend of the Philadelphia scene, and definitely cut from the same cloth. Your heart-centered work for women in tech, for STEM, for youth, your legacy that you're leaving is touching. Because I've been out here covering this the last few days and getting an idea of what's happening with the Women in Tech Summit. And the hands-down thing is Gloria Bell.
Thank you.
So I'm excited to be sitting with you today at the Women in Tech Summit. It looks like it's May 3rd on my watch, 2024, in the historic town of Philadelphia that has so much to offer. But here at the Science
History Institute.
The Science History Institute, which is also an amazing venue. So kudos for choosing such a great venue where you can go on break and learn about all these innovations that have changed our world, besides all the politics and American history that's here. The science history and the tech history is really amazing here. So what I want to do is just ask you a couple questions about the Women in Tech Summit, but more than that, getting to know you a little bit, because this is something that I think we talked about you've been doing for over 13 years.
Well,
across many cities as well. So I encourage you, if you're listening, to go check out online all the different spin-offs of Women in Tech Summit that occur all over the United States. So definitely over 40 events and more, and you've been involved with a lot. But today I want to hear about your inspiration for the Women in Tech Summit organization and therefore the summits that come with it. Like, what was your inspiration? Like, why did you decide to do this?
So I am one of the founders. There actually was a group of us, women who were working in tech and in entrepreneurship here in the Philadelphia area. And the way the organization got started is we were having conversations, kind of doing a little bit of bemoaning about when we were going out to tech and entrepreneur events, like 14 years ago, 13, 14 years ago, we weren't seeing that many women. And the ones that we were seeing were over and over again. And to be honest, we were seeing each other. But we knew from our own personal networks, there was a lot more women working in tech in this area that weren't going out to events. The other piece of it was very siloed. Developers were going to developer events and marketers were going to marketing events. And, finance people went to finance things and HR people went to HR things. And we would joke a little bit, the sales and recruiting people went to everything.
Yeah. Someone's got to buy the lunch.
Exactly. But there was no real cross-pollination between the people working in technical roles and the people working in non-technical roles at tech companies. And we firmly believed that it did not matter what role you held in tech, you were still a woman in tech. And we wanted to kind of break down those barriers. And we also wanted to build a strong foundation because you can't do anything to breaking down gender inequity if you don't have a strong community. So the first Philly Women in Tech Summit, which is what the first one was called, was originally intended to be a one-day, one-time event to cross-pollinate these networks, to bring together the women in this region to get to know each other, support each other, learn from each other. So we held that first event here. A group of volunteers, I was one of them, and hoping we could get about 50 women to give up a Saturday and come meet each other, learn from each other. We held some talks. We talked about all the various groups that, were already in this area, supporting women in tech, introduced everybody to, here's the organizations already here. Here's how you can get involved. Did some workshops. And we had 125 women that showed up at the first event. And by the end of the day, everybody was saying, this is amazing. When are you doing it next? And then we said, okay, let's do it next year. And it became an annual event in Philadelphia. 4 years in, we had grown substantially. Our keynote speaker that year came to myself and one of the co-founders and said, you're doing something completely different than a lot of the other conferences I go to. Your programming's different. Your attitude about bringing together women in technical and non-technical roles at all levels of their careers is different than a lot of what is currently happening in the conference arena. And she said, think about taking your show on the road. And so we did. We eventually grew to doing conferences in 5 cities across the U.S. We've made some pivots since the pandemic. We obviously went all virtual like everybody else during the pandemic. And then post-pandemic, we've made some other changes. We're only doing 2 in-person events in 2024, this spring event that we're at right now, and then we'll do one in the fall in Denver. But we're also doing more virtual programming because we picked up a global audience by doing the virtual events, I hope, while we were all in lockdown. So, we got here by serving a need that we wanted to bring community together. We wanted to make sure that we were bringing together people that needed to be connected.
It's so amazing, and I thank you for the work that you've done because we leave legacies with this types of effort. So all of the time that you've put in, all the printing of name tags, someone said even before this event that you posted a picture of printing name tags on your bed the night before, and earlier you grabbed specifically one woman's name tag, like exactly like you were the master. But it's funny, being in Philadelphia, I'm not from here, so it's a little bit of a tourist event for me, but I see the story of like Betsy Ross, and it all starts with like one flag. So it's like kind of like you're like the Betsy Ross of women in tech for Philadelphia, because but it was never just her, right? She then built these communities of women as you've done. So I'm kind of seeing you as my new tech diva, Betsy Ross. That's starting, but it all can change a life. So when women come to the Women in Tech Summit, what do you really hope that they take away? I know there's a lot there, but what are some things that you hope they really leave with?
So our tagline has always been educate, inspire, connect. So obviously we're wanting them to take away skills. All of our programming is based in forward-looking, actionable skills. We're helping them build careers. We're not a fancy conference with swag and parties and lots of big signage and all that. Our programming is about how do we help you grow your career? How do we help you grow your network? So skills. More importantly, I want them to come away with new relationships and not surface level relationships. I want them to come away with having met at least one, but preferably a handful or a huge number of really great new connections of people doing a lot of different things in tech. Because that is where we make progress when we're building a support system. This industry is not easy, especially if you are working as an underrepresented group. If you are a woman, if you are a non-binary person, if you are doing something in this industry in an underrepresented group, there are days it's really, really hard. And the way we get through it is by the people we surround ourselves with. It's our allies. It has been so wonderful for me, the number of men that we see that are coming as our allies. And they're coming, and they're not coming to talk. They're not coming to lead a conversation. They're coming to sit and listen. Mm-hmm. And that is even more.
I sat by a gentleman earlier today who was taking frivolous notes and wanted to connect, me as a woman to other people. So it's definitely a vibe. And I like this small connection vibe of your conference. You're right. Every conference has its place. And this isn't the one with the big fancy sponsors, but I encourage people that might be out there listening to actually look at traveling for one of these, because again, like you have the community here, and sometimes we often live in our local communities only instead of branching out. So I think one thing that became clear to me from coming out to this event is to try to go to some women in tech events like the Women in Tech Summit outside of your region, because then you could see like reflections of the people in your community, like yourself, doing the great work in other areas. So it's been really great to connect there. So your personal background, and you have a lot of experience, not just with this, but I could probably list off a whole nother podcast of all the organizations that you've touched, that you've been a part of. And that's part of your heart-centered, legacy that you're creating. But what about your personal background and experience influence is this mission? Like, what do you think prepared you to be carrying a 13-year successful Women in Tech Summit?
So I tell everyone, we talk about career ladders, and then the popular thing was, well, it's a career jungle gym. Mine was not a ladder. Mine was not a jungle gym. It was not a playground. It was a full-on amusement park with every kind of ride. I have been incredibly blessed to be able to do a lot of different things in my career. I had a 20-year corporate career working in insurance that I walked away from at probably the height of my career to start my own company, because I realized I had not followed the path of something I was really in love with right out of high school, because I didn't have anybody showing me what that career could look like. I didn't never have anybody absolutely tell me I couldn't do it, but I didn't have anybody showing me what that could look like. And so in my almost 40s, I pursued it anyway. So I grew up, my father was a career military officer who got his master's degree in data processing. So I'm really dating myself here.
when I was in elementary school, I grew up with computers. I grew up with technology. You know, we were always the first ones in the neighborhood that had a computer. And I loved it. I remember being 6 years old and walking into the computer room, because computers were a whole room back then when my dad was going to school, and being fascinated. I learned to code in high school on punch cards. But I didn't have anybody showing me what that career looked like back then. And I had teachers who told me, well, I wasn't really great at math, so technology wasn't. We didn't even call it technology back then. We just called it, computers. Computers weren't a career for me. So I took a whole different path. Always stayed involved. Every job I ever had, if we were putting in new computer systems, I was the one raising my hand to test them. I was the one raising my hand to be a part of those projects. Owned and ran several small businesses on the side, because entrepreneurship is also in my blood. Owned a construction company. I owned a residential and commercial cleaning service. And I was running a friend's technology project management company, and said, this is what I love. This is really what I love. And so that was when I walked away from my corporate career and got into this industry. And I left and started my own operations and process consulting for tech startups. And it was stepping into that world and having been in a world where I already knew there was issues with equality and equity in the workplace, stepping into another world with big issues of equity and equality in the workplace. I am not the kind of person that sits back and says, this is okay. That's just not who my family raised me to be. You know, my father was in the military. We stand for something. And if you stand for something, you do something to fix it. And so every little step that we can take, it's why I do this work. It's why I have volunteered for organizations like Tech Girls. It is why I sit on the board of Philly Startup Leaders, because every founder that we can make their life easier, every woman founder that we can support and help them get more investment, we are creating a better society and a better economy. It is about hands up, not hands out. You reach back and you pull up the people behind you.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed to have a pretty good life.
Well,
Easy one, but a good one.
You get what you give, though.
Exactly.
So I'm the same way. Gratitude is such a blessing. Mm-hmm. And I've heard that theme many times, but I want to reflect back to you that gratitude is a reciprocal gift back of what you've given. So for all of those long nights,
yeah,
I've seen it here. And being feet on the street for you, I will tell you that it reflects back in the joy of these faces and the stories that I've heard of people. This is their first Women in Tech conference.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So kudos to you. It's a true joy to hear like what made you, and your heart is in this, and that it also shows in your story that we often talk about finding your passion, pursuing your passion. And people will say, what does that mean? You know, and you are a living example of that through your story. So I appreciate you sharing that with me. So is there any themes? People might be asking, like, do you have any themes or topics that this event was surrounded around? Or is it just the key things of your mission to educate them?
So every Women in Tech Summit, we run 3 tracks at the event. And the first track is called Innovate Yourself. And it is career development, professional development. We're going to bring in speakers and panels who are providing you information on how to move your career forward. Sometimes a little bit of inspiration, but it's generally very actionable ways of moving your career forward. What you will not find is we don't do touchy-feely, how do you play nice with the boys? We don't do any of that kind of stuff. This is actionable. You're going to walk out of here and use it to move your career forward. We'll have some hard discussions sometimes. But it's going to be important discussions for you. It's going to be important discussions for your career. It's going to be important discussions for our industry that are going to help us continue to move forward. They're going to be actionable things that we can do. So that's our Innovators Health track. We do our Trends in Technology track. So we're going to have a lot of fun because, like, you know,
Yes.
I'm very much a news nerd, and I'm always paying attention
It's
to
a futurist track.
futurist track. Yeah. But this is where we're talking about not every single thing that's happening new in tech, but we're looking at what is happening in tech. And what I really like to look at when we're doing that is sometimes some of the unusual ways, the things that we don't always think about. Like we had a talk today talking about AI in education. And I love that. And we actually had a teacher from a local school district that was talking about how they're using AI in education. Those are the things that, and this is what's happening. This is where we're going in tech. And with those talks, because we have this audience that is both technical people and people working in non-technical roles, and they're at all levels of their careers, students all the way to senior executives. What I'm looking for when I'm programming that track is I don't want this really high level that I can watch the news, I can read a blog post, I'm going to get that same information. And I don't want such a deep dive. You have to work in it to understand what they're talking about. I want that middle view where you're getting a pretty good look at it and maybe a little bit of a deep dive, but you're really going to understand what it is, why it's important, why people are talking about, how it's being used. Like, for example, it's being used in education. We were talking about the metaverse beyond gaming. How is the metaverse being used beyond people sitting there gaming? And my most important thing from that track is when you walk out of there, you're going to understand the terminology. Because for me, that is a huge skill jump, no matter what you do. Because if you can sit down in a conversation next time and somebody is talking about that technology, whether you work in it or adjacent to it, whatever, and you can be part of that conversation because you understand the terminology, you have just gotten a huge skill boost.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm looking for in that track. And then we do hands-on workshops, and this is where I just get to have a lot of fun. When I program this, it's from those two tracks. We do both technical and non-technical workshops, and we are really just, this is where you get to sit and get your hands dirty.
Yeah. And those are usually a little bit longer sessions on the second day.
Correct.
Which is really great. And while people are networking around the event.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. And then what is in the future? Like envisioning the future growth of Women in Tech Summit, the impact, like, is there a big, hairy, audacious goal? I like to call them bonfire goals.
Bonfire goal. I love that.
A big bonfire goal for Women in Tech Summit. Is there something you imagine? We could put it in the universe here.
Put it in the universe. So I would like us to, we had to do some scaling back post-pandemic. Funding is not what it used to be. People are still trying to kind of figure out how they want to attend conferences post-pandemic. I would like to see us back in multiple cities. I think there is a need and a place for the smaller size conference. One of the things that we learned, and we have always had a goal of, our conferences will never be larger than 500 or 600 people, because that's the magic number. Most people don't realize that when you go to a conference larger than that, you talk to people you know or people they know. You don't talk to strangers at a conference larger than that, unless you maybe happen to be sitting next to them or standing in line next to them. But you don't go up and approach a stranger at a large conference. There's actually studies out there that tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've experienced as well, going to like the Grace Hoppers, which have a different value, different goal.
They are tremendous value in those large conferences.
But you're right. It's
like the smaller conferences are where you make different connections.
Yes.
And so that's always been our place. And so I want to see us grow to where we're doing multiple of these. Like I would like to have one of these in every region across the U.S. and international.
Yeah. Well, it's out there. Get ready. Attraction, because we're attracting it here. Well, I have just 2 more quick questions for you. Well, they're not quick, but I love them anyway. One is, do you have any moments from your 13 years that have just been so memorable of an event moment, whether it was an experience, a talk, an aha moment for you from these events that you would want to share? I know there's so many.
The list is so long. There have been a few, and I'm going to kind of, and they've been so similar, I'm just going to kind of summarize them in a generality. But is the number of times when I have selected a speaker who has told me, I submitted to speak after having been at your conference. I've never been a speaker before, but I came to your conference. I was so inspired. I went out, I learned to speak, and I submitted to speak, and I'm now getting to put that speaker on stage. Like those, and it's happened so many times. Like that to me is so wonderful. The number of people who come to me is like, I found a new job. I made a new connection. I've had several people that have gone on to start companies together. The mentoring sessions where I've had people come back to me, I met my mentor at your session, and like I now have this new job thanks to my mentor. Like stories like that over and over and over again over the years. It's amazing.
All right. Well, I feel that, and I think that it's hard to pick one thing, because I think it's those individual experiences that give a collective aha moment. Those are the ones that you remember that it's worth it. And, you know, as part of Tech Diva success, we like to define success on our own terms. So what does a successful conference look like to you?
For me, it is at least one person walks out of there telling me I made a great connection and I learned something. I may have 300 and something people here, but when I have at least one person who walks up to me, and you know when it's a genuine, from the heart, something they've never really felt like they've experienced before, and they come up to you and they say that, that's all I need.
And that's an inspiration in itself, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Too often we look at metrics of the size of the people, but it's about the size of impact, and it only takes one.
Yeah.
Bit by bit.
And I tell you, to add on to that, so one of the things that we do too is we do a ticket assistance program. We give away, I gave away 30 tickets to this conference to people who are unemployed or could not afford to come. And when it's one of those people who gives me that, it means even more. Like, because I know I've really made an impact.
Well, you've made an impact on me, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for our book collaboration that we're doing. But like getting to know outside of our network is a big takeaway. And I wouldn't be here without you believing in me and seeing my work too. It's about honoring each other. The rising tide raises all boats type of thing. But I totally honor you and celebrate you, because it ignites something in me that, you know, often they'll say if you see something positive in someone, it's a reflection of yourself. It goes the other way too, but I like to focus on the positive stuff. But, you know, I just thank you and celebrate you again for everything that you're doing here. Is there anything else that you want to share about the Women in Tech Summit? Obviously, we'll post any information about it so you could see if there's a local one near you. But is there anything else that you want to say to the Women in Tech or about the Women in Tech Summit?
I just encourage everybody, show up every day. I mean, one of the things that will make a difference for women and non-binary people in this industry is we keep showing up every day. We keep telling our stories. We keep talking about the amazing work that we do and claiming it. Because all too often we get heads down and we do the work and we don't claim the work that we do. And that's how we're going to convince the next generation to be a part of this industry, is by letting them see what we are, who we are, and the work that we do. That's how we inspire them. So just keep showing up, keep doing the work.
Keep showing up. Well, I hope you keep showing up because you're just going to get bigger and more impactful, and all these lives that you're changing are adding up. So thank you, and thank you for this time. It was a pleasure talking to you. Now I'm going to give you a big hug. What a great listen to the inspirational story of Gloria Bell and her wonderful Women in Tech Summit. Again, thank you for having me. I really feel like leaving the conference, her mission was accomplished. I left feeling educated, inspired, and connected to some amazing new divas. Now let's leave this episode with some additional comments from more people I met at the conference, and I'll see you there next year.
My name is Dr. Jess Mena. I am the Senior Director of Data Integration and Operations at Health.
Great. What's your doctorate in?
Organizational Leadership and Management.
Congrats. And I see you're a speaker here at the conference. What was your presentation on?
On cultivating your career superpower using personal strengths for professional.
Awesome. And what is the TLDR of your presentation?
The biggest takeaway is that we are all very unique, and we should lean into our strengths and cultivate and develop those. We shouldn't let other people's perceptions or ideas of what our limitations are define us.
Say it louder for the people in the back. I love it. And what is it about Women in Tech Summit that made you excited to submit for a speaker and be a speaker?
It's just a great opportunity to network with people that you'd never interact with otherwise. It's such a small field, and being able to understand that there's a lot of us and we're experiencing the same challenges.
Great. And what was your biggest joy, like personally, for you speaking? What did you get the most out of it today?
I really enjoyed connecting with people that have different experiences than me, but similar feelings.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. But when you come to these events and you're thinking about your intention, what do you personally gain? What do you come in to get for yourself as a leader?
So honestly, there's always something I pick up in like regards to like with the sessions. There's always a session that I'm like super excited about that I get in. I do get from the communication and the interactions. My cup is full when I leave here. Like it definitely like having the conversations with the people that are getting something out of WITS and like just kind of like hearing like, okay, yes, this
like validation.
Validation, yes. Okay, all this work is paying off. This does make sense. Okay, keep going. And then also hearing what's not working. Not even just with WITS, but just in the world in general, in the industry and with women, because then I have that ability to kind of work on that.
Yeah, like change in the real world.
Change in the real world, yeah. One thing that I know that I have happened that I've talked to so many other people, it's a similar thing, is that I come to WITS or, a similar kind of event, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this all the time. This is what I needed. I have the energy to keep going, and then I don't. I have to like almost like get to a point where I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I feeling so blah? I need to fill my cup. And then like, that's when I decide to do it. So, I just would share that like, if you know that you get like joy and energy from these kinds of things, like take the same approach that you do with vacation. You don't end the one vacation before you have the next one lined up. So I would recommend that,
Awesome.
like line up.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for everything that you've done.
My name is Camila Quintana. I'm a member of Latinas in Tech, the Philly chapter, and I'm a senior UX designer. Like some of the talks that I really liked from yesterday were specifically talking about AI, particularly the last one that was talking a lot more about the legalities and just like regulations behind AI. Because I feel and a lot of the other summits that I've been to, they brush over that concept, but like it was just very nice to have actual lawyers in the field just breaking down a lot of the questions that I've had from previous summits and just really addressing what's being done and who are the leaders in this space on regulating this new technology.
Yes. Oh, it's so important.
I'm Muffy Torres. I am an upcoming UX designer, and for me, this was really important because I am pivoting from like a nonprofit sector into the tech world, and I haven't really had any interactions, like in-person interactions. I've been doing mostly boot camps and courses online, and it feels really insular, and I feel like I'm in a silo sometimes. So to engage with these powerful, badass women in this way is so refreshing and insightful, and I've learned so much, but I've also like gained, I don't know, a supercharge of like empowerment that I wasn't expecting. Yesterday I was full of nerves, like pretty anxious, and today I feel like, oh my gosh, I can see myself doing this, and I feel supported, and now I know people, and it's all happening, and I'm finally gonna move out of the nonprofit space.
Transferable skills. We underestimate that, from any industry, waiting tables, service industry, like it doesn't matter what you do. You're here for a reason.
I'm Allie Bothi. I'm a founding partner of a digital marketing agency called Well-Oiled Marketing. We work a lot in the tech, B2B, SaaS, and health spaces. So that's kind of where the tech relation comes in. I'm pretty involved in the Philly networking founders tech world. So I feel like over the last years, I've started to go to a lot of these events. I see the same people over and over again. And so Gloria is involved with Philly Startup Leaders, which is a group that I'm involved with as well. And she's been plugging WITS for months now. So definitely great to get out here today and, hear perspectives that I think are similar to the perspectives a lot of my clients have. So that's really useful insight for me. And then also as somebody who, there is a certain element of tech in the actual work we do as well. So it's kind of hitting from both sides for me today, which has been great.
So what do you look forward to when you come to these events?
Sessions are great. The topics that they're covering for these 2 days, definitely there's a handful that I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. I know. But I think even more so it is the community element and it's the networking element of it, to find the support system. And then also, I feel like for me being a founder and as somebody who's like providing a service, it's always two hats. It's the content and the meeting people and having the community, but it's also, building my network and service and growing my business long term. But I do think it's important when I talk to other people about, how would you go about growing your business, is you have to look at events like this as long term. If you come in with a transactional mindset, it shows really easily. And I think it kind of ruins any trust that you might have with people that you're building a connection with. So I'm looking at my business as a long-term plan for my future. And so a client may come from somebody I met 2 years ago in an event that I've kept their touch with. So that's the plan.
Hey, well, that's some good wisdom for events in life, I think.
Yeah.
It's a marathon.
Yeah, it absolutely
not a
is
sprint.
Marathon, for sure.
Thanks again. Obviously, you're in the startup scene. You're rocking it. That's a pretty busy schedule. Why is it so important for you personally to invest your volunteer time and your time here at these events, specifically for women in tech? Like, why do you think that the diversity message and the work in this field is so important in relation to the startup work?
Startups are this amazing vehicle to just create change. And right now, when you look across the world, there's any plethora of problems that need solving. Everything's open. Everything's an opportunity. Everything's up for disruption right now. And I think that when you have that ability to create change, you really want to have the most diverse group of voices in the room. You want to have fresh new perspectives because clearly there's a lot of things that simply aren't working or at their past peak. So this would be the time that I think we really need to get more women involved in these rooms, get them much more seats at the table, get them into more leadership positions, because ultimately, as we have more women in startup leadership, as they're entrepreneurs in large corporate communities that are working on innovation as well, this is really where I think we're going to start seeing that seismic shift in the world. And ultimately, especially as it relates to startups, the easiest and fastest way to get more women into investment and ultimately provide way more support is by giving them that experience as operators, as startup founders, so when they exit, they can come back and become that change that they need to see in the VC community as well. So those are some of the reasons why I think that work specifically around WITS is important to startups. Plus, I think it's important to have that workforce and to have new perspectives. And especially with so many new technologies being developed in rooms like WITS, there's also a lot of really good peer mentorship and like cross-generational mentorship. Yeah. And I think that's so valuable as in technologies and emerge. And I think, network's everything. And so especially in the startup world, like you really are only as good as the people that are in your corner, the people that you know. And these sort of conversations that are happening at WITS are helping people expand their knowledge, but also build relationships that are going to help them build businesses and make them way more viable and sustainable. So, and I think it's just important to also show young women that this is an option for them and that this is for them too, and they can crush it.
So thank you for giving back and for making this a priority. Thanks so much again to everyone who contributed to this interview, and please go find and follow these amazing organizations. I'm going to include these at the bottom of my blog article over at techdivasuccess.com/blog in case you're not able to do this now. And again, shout out to the Women in Tech Summit, the Inspiring Tech Foundation, Philly Startup Leaders, CompTIA, Anita Borg, Latinas in Tech Philly chapter, and of course, our own Tech Diva Success. You can reach all these resources on our website. Anyone who's looking to gamify your self-care, make sure you check out our new self-care app over at divascore.app. And in addition, we have our shop live at Tech Diva Success that's packed full of some of my favorite biohacking gear, some sweet Diva swag so you can get your crew together for your next Women in Tech conference, and various other programs I recommend. Thanks again for joining, and remember, together we can do more. Cheers to your success.